My friend Mr. Mole says, gentlemen, that this isn't a race question. This is a murder case. We don't want any prejudice. We don't want the other side to have any. Race and color have nothing to do with this case. This is a case of murder. I insist that there is nothing but prejudice in this case, that if it was reversed and 11 white men had shot and killed a black while protecting their home and their lives against a mob of blacks, nobody would have dreamed of having them indicted. I know what I am talking about, and so do you. I think not one man of this jury wants to be prejudiced. It is forced into us almost from our youth, until somehow or other we feel we are superior to these people who have black faces. But they tell me there is no race prejudice, and it is plain nonsense and nothing else. How much do you know about prejudice, race prejudice, religious prejudice, these feelings that have divided men and have caused them to do the most terrible things? Prejudices have burned men at the stake, broken them on the rack, torn every joint apart, destroyed people by the million. Men have done this on account of some terrible prejudice, which even now is reaching out to undermine this republic of ours and to destroy the freedom that has been the most cherished part of our institutions. These witnesses honestly believe that they are better than blacks. I do not. They honestly believe that it is their duty to keep colored people out. They honestly believe that blacks are an inferior race, and yet if they look at themselves, I don't know how they can. These blacks have been called many names along down through the ages, but there have been those through the sad years who have believed that a black man should have some rights, even in a country where he was brought in chains. There are those even crazy enough to hope and to dream that sometime he will come out from under this cloud and take his place amongst the people of the world. If he does, it will be through his courage and his culture. It will be by his intelligence and his scholarship and his effort. And I say, gentlemen of the jury, no honest, right-feeling man, whether on a jury or anywhere else, would place anything in his way in this great struggle behind him and before him. I don't know how this question of color will ever be solved, or whether it will be solved. Nature has a way of doing things. There is one thing about nature. She has plenty of time. She would make broad prairies so that we can raise wheat and corn to feed men. How does she do it? She sends a glacier plowing across a continent and takes 50,000 years to harrow it and make it fit to till and support human life. She makes a man. She tries endless experiments before the man is done. She wants to make a race, and it takes an infinite mixture to make it. She wants to give us some conception of human rights and some kindness and charity, and she makes pain and suffering and sorrow and death. It all counts. That is a rough way, but it is the only way. It all counts in the great, long, broad scheme of things. I look on a trial like this with a feeling of disgust and shame. I can't help it now. It will be after we have learned that in the terrible and expensive school of human experience that we will be willing to find each other and understand each other. I feel deeply on this subject. I cannot help it. Let us take a little glance at the history of the Negro race. It only needs a minute. It seems to me that the story would melt hearts of stone. I was born in America. I could have left it if I had wanted to go away. Some other men reading about this and land of freedom that we brag about on the 4th of July came voluntarily to America. These men, the defendants, are here because they could not help it. Their ancestors were captured in the jungles and on the plains of Africa, captured as you capture wild beasts, torn from their homes and their kindred, loaded into slave ships, packed like sardines in a box, half of them dying on the ocean passage, some jumping into the sea in their frenzy, when they had a chance to choose death in place of slavery. They were captured and brought here. They could not help it. They were brought and sold as slaves to work without pay because they were black. They were subjected to all of this for generations until finally they were given their liberty so far as the law goes. and that is only a little way, because after all, every human being's life in this world is inevitably mixed with every other life, and no matter what laws we pass, no matter what precautions we take, unless the people we meet are kindly and decent and human and liberty-loving, then there is no liberty. Freedom comes from human beings rather than from laws and institutions. Now that is their history. These people are the children of slavery. If the race we belong to owes anything to any human being or to any power in this universe, it owes it to these black men. Above other men, they owe an obligation and a duty to these black men which can never be repaid. I never see one of them that I do not feel I ought to pay part of the debt of my race. And if you gentlemen feel as you should feel in this case, your emotions will be like mine. Your verdict means something in this case. It means something more than the fate of this boy. It is not often that a case is submitted to 12 men where the decision may mean a milestone in the progress of the human race, but this case does. And I hope and I trust that you have a feeling of responsibility that will make you take it and do your duty as citizens of a great nation, as members of the human family, which is better still. I know there is a long road ahead of the Negro race before he can take the place which I believe he should take. I know that before him there is suffering, sorrow, tribulation, and death amongst the blacks, and perhaps the whites. I am sorry. I would do what I can to avert it. I would advise patience. I would advise toleration. I would advise understanding. I would advise all of those things which are necessary for men who live together. This case is about to end, gentlemen. This is all. I ask you, on behalf of this defendant, on behalf of these helpless ones who turn to you, and more than that, on behalf of this great state and this great city, which must face this problem and face it fairly, I ask you, in the name of progress and of the human race, to return a verdict of not guilty in this case. Clarence Darrow's words remind us that the struggle to achieve human rights for all has always been present, and that it is the responsibility of every generation to recommit to these noble ideas. Thank you.